Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the #1 podcast for the business and marketing side of the lumber, woodworking, hardwood flooring, and sawmill industry. I'm your host, Steve from Acres of Timber. Each week, we feature various wood business owners and entrepreneurs from around the globe. We share their stories, paths, insights so that you can network, learn, and grow your own wood business. Thank you so much for listening. Now enjoy the episode. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve Largeliere. Today's guest is Jim Carrigan from JECO Finishing. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Hey, why don't you tell everybody about JECO? How'd you get started in this world of finishing?
Well, like a lot of finishers, I probably sort of cut my teeth in the painting industry to start with.
Mm-hmm.
If I go way back in the beginning, I actually, that show Gold Rush?
Yeah.
All that equipment. When I was a kid, I used to paint. I learned how to paint by painting that stuff, like gravel crushers and conveyors and all that kind of stuff, working for my dad when I was 3. That's kind of where I learned how to handle a spray gun. So later on in life, I sort of got into the painting industry. I worked at a local paint store for a couple of years and sort of got to know the industry a little bit, and then decided I'm going to go out on my own and get into some painting. And that led me into wood finishing, oftentimes on site as part of that. And I sort of found my niche there where, again, it was spraying and sort of, I loved working with wood. It's very satisfying, right? So I kind of eventually started to narrow my focus into just working with wood, and eventually started my own finishing shop in 2003.
Okay.
And then decided just to focus on shop work not long after that. So really, I mean, it was really just for the love of working with wood and spraying, and there's just the kind of creativity behind it that sort of made me narrow my focus right down to it.
What really kind of kept you in the finishing world as opposed to the making building part?
Well, I was never really part of that, but all my customers are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I established a lot of relationships with these guys. They started to trust me with, some of their work that they put a lot of work into, because as probably a lot of your viewers have experienced, where, they can put their blood, sweat, and tears into a project, and then if the finish or the paint job on it ends up looking like garbage, man, it just kills you inside. It's just like, it's soul crushing, right? To have all that work just be killed by a bad finish. So I guess what happened is that I sort of started establishing relationships with a lot of the carpenters, cabinet makers, and makers that, were dealing with some of the builders or other clients that I was dealing with, and started to come directly to me. And that sort of led me to, and the pressure still is the same today. It's led me to not only start my own shop, but constantly expand and grow to the level that we're at today.
And who are your sort of, and I'm assuming there's probably a lot of repeat business that you get, like who are the main clients and customers that you end up serving?
So mainly we're dealing with cabinet makers and mill shops. So, okay. And these are businesses that don't have finishing as part of their processes. Mm-hmm. I started to see quite early on a real huge opportunity in this industry, because there were a lot of makers, small guys, maybe 1 or 2 man operations, maybe even garage type builders, that just finishing was not part of their MO, and they needed to have somebody, a good finishing partner, so that they could provide a finished product. And so that's kind of where it all started. So 90% of our clients are cabinet makers and mill shops.
That's awesome. And how big is your team? Or when you first started the business, like, where was the vision for where you wanted to be, and where are you at in realizing that vision?
Yeah. When I first started, I probably failed to have much vision at all. It was more a question of just okay, how am I going to do all of this? And then started realizing the pressure for growth was not just a temporary thing that was happening. It was just kind of a constant thing. So um, I started out like everybody else, or like most people, just me, right? I was on
Mhm.
my own, and I learned how to work efficiently and quickly, and do a really good job on my own. And then I had to start bringing in other people to sort of take other aspects of the job, prep or other things that are a little more labor intensive. So I started slow growing. In my first shop, I think there were at the most four of us working in it.
Mm.
Today, the shop that I have now, I've got 15 staff, and we're
Amazing.
running two shifts. So to answer your question about what my original vision was,
It was a
I don't,
lot smaller than what it is right now.
I, yeah, I don't, it wasn't where I'm at today, but
Yeah.
it certainly has evolved. I've gotten ahead of myself at times, where I started thinking, oh, I'm going to just jump all in and go crazy and grow big fast. And as we all know, there are many examples that we've probably seen over the years where if you go too big too fast, that's also a death knell for your business. So
Yeah.
I I've definitely had to approach with caution, but constantly reinvest in the business to keep growing.
Incredible. Incredible. Um, I'm assuming, like, I see Vero Metal. You must know Robert Chicky.
Absolutely, Robert and I are good friends, and
Okay.
yep, and Robert and I have sort of partnered up, right? I mean, as far
Awesome.
as Spear Metal in Canada, he has
Hmm.
entrusted me and my company to grow the market here in Canada. So,
It's a kind of a way. I started a relationship with him, and I guess one of the things that I learned was the work that you do is so pivotal to the project.
yeah,
It is like it is it I don't I hate to say it's the icing on the cake, but it really is the icing on the cake.
yeah,
Because without you, everything else doesn't really matter because it's the first thing people see.
yeah, that's right.
And it's almost like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, like people, the makers actually need to partner with you in order to make their work stand out because it's actually it is a different skill set than building, correct?
100%. Not only a different skill set, it's a completely different business model.
It's a different business model and
Right.
it's a different level of investment too.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's challenges that we have in this trade, and it is a trade. No, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily recognized as a trade. There's challenges that we have in this trade that are not necessarily in the carpentry or cabinet making trade. One of them is there's no trade school for this. There should be, and
Mm.
it's one of those mantles that I've decided maybe when I get a little bit older and have a little more time on my hands, I'm gonna pick up that flag and run with it a little bit because I think
Yeah,
I really do think that there should be an apprenticeship program for finishing.
sure.
Um,
And
the other,
it's a long-term skill.
yeah,
It's a like a decade level experience, right?
oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's not all unlike any other apprenticeship should be run. I mean,
Sure.
there's levels of learning, stages of growth, and you really can't move to the next one until you've mastered the one before it.
Yeah.
And it takes years. Absolutely, you understand that. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Where how do you continue to grow and evolve the business?
Well, there's two different answers for that. So the way it used to be and the way it is now are two different things. So um, I where I used to be, which would be a smaller shop, a one bay operation with three or four guys, probably that is representative of about 90% of the finishing shops throughout North America. They are sort of set up in that way. So they've got their they're clients that keep them busy, and they're more or less fat and happy and don't really want to get too much beyond that because the growing pains can really hurt. Where the difference between that and where we are now is that I decided early on that I needed to really just take a chance and continually reinvest in the company. And rather than just being fat and happy and just being happy with the clients that we have and just, everybody's working and everybody's happy, I decided I wanted to build something. I wanted to build a business that's going to basically outlive me. I want to build something that I think will be an entity of itself. And I'm very close to that now. So the way that we grow now is different than the way we used to, where I really would have to get out there, cold call, go after it, bring in new clients, go after new business. Now we have gravity that just kind of pulls it in. So I'm not saying that I'm just sitting back and letting it all come, because I still hustle, but it's definitely created its own momentum now, and it's really maintaining and still continuing to grow.
That's incredible. And where do you see the business going, like in the future? Like where's do you think there's an education process, or do you feel like there's a um is it do you feel like the market is going to add a level of like, oh, I need this more?
I think so. Um, I think that the main reason is site finishing is kind of a dinosaur's way of finishing cabinetry and millwork, unless it's like the kind of millwork where you got doors and casings and built-in stuff. But I'm talking about pre-finishing versus site finishing. Here in Alberta in particular, and we weren't alone, we're still a little bit behind the curve in terms of what's happened in other places in North America, but particularly in Europe. So the pre-finishing, I'll refer to it that way now, which is basically everything that's shop finished before it's installed. The pre-finishing industry is, I think, going to go through even more and more growth, because really there's two advantages to pre-finishing. One of them is it shortens your construction cycle for the builders. In other words, they can continue on getting trades doing other things during the construction cycle of the house while the cabinets are being built and finished off-site. They only have to schedule an install, not having guys camped in there building it and then having painters in there finishing it and gassing everything out. No other trades can work in there at the same time. That's one. The other, the smaller makers, to offer pre-finished cabinetry to builders that they may not have otherwise been able to get into because they didn't have a finished product per se. They didn't have a finishing facility. So they partner with somebody like us, and now you've got a complete product. So that is more the model of how it's done in Europe and how it's been done for quite a long time. And now in North America, I think it's just starting to sort of move in that direction.
And how do you anticipate growing your business? Like, I know that talent is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
How are you planning to grow your business?
From where we are now, we're already in the process of exploring automation. So there's two ways to look at automation. I think that sometimes it's mistakenly viewed as a way to just do finishing without any soul or any talent. We've heard that argument, and I get that argument, but there's about 60 to 70% of the work that flows through my shop, which is basically just flat cabinetry, that can be automated. The rest of it, you still got to have that talent. You still got to have these finishers. You still got to have the ability to finish 3D. You still have to have the ability to do custom blending on wood finishes and those kinds of things. But with the amount of paint grade cabinetry and the amount of clear finishes that we do, we can definitely automate. So that being said, that's a big part of our plans going forward. We've looked very closely at it. We're working with some lean manufacturing consultants to sort of really streamline our operations and our thinking and our methods so that we can sort of prepare ourselves for the next stage, which is automation. We've sort of started automating our prep department a little bit. We've got a brush sander that we run everything through. We're going to be looking at automating the finishing part of it with, like, say, a flat line that essentially will take, like, the amount of volume those things can put out is incredible. So you got to be able to prepare yourself to deal with how do you support that kind of equipment and not create a bunch of bottlenecks. So I guess what we're doing right now is a homework to prepare ourselves for that, because I think the potential for growth is still really, really huge.
That's fascinating. Yeah, just like automation, and I'm assuming that takes a pretty big investment, huh?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can start at different levels. We have our own curing oven and everything here now. It's just a large convection, 2,300 cubic foot convection oven. So we can sort of step into automation with finishing by starting with just a flat line and an in-feed and out-feed, and then just feed it into the oven manually on racks, which is kind of what we plan to do, because the investment to go straight from manual to soup to nuts finishing line is probably $1.5 million.
Wow. Wow.
I think that we can start with more closer to about $500,000 and to get started. Even that's still a pretty significant investment.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a part of the podcast where I give you any marketing or business advice. Is there anything that you need to think through, or challenges that have recently come up that I can help you with?
Well, I mean, I would say growth is always our biggest challenge, and sort of how we're managing that and getting our message across to the industry that pre-finishing is the way of the future, and the way that I think things can be done so that small businesses can compete. Just kind of, we're using social media a lot right now, but
yeah, I see you do a good job on that.
We still, our website is not very. We haven't done much with it. I mean, that's kind of in the works. So, I guess it's sort of you've maybe had an overview when you were kind of looking over us before this podcast, and maybe your impressions and what you think maybe we could work on.
I almost feel like, so I think part of it is like, if you work with cabinet shops, millwork shops, especially around you, is to build a community around that. Like, and if you can help solve their problems and understand uniquely their problems and make JECO like the center of those conversations. And, finishing is one piece, but there's other things too, right? Collaboration, innovation, and partnership. And so, for one, I think there's a couple things. One is you could potentially help these companies install a finishing department in their business as a consultant, right? And like, you can place a person there, and then you manage and train, and there's potentially some reoccurring revenue. Or you can show them the ROI on what it would take in order to work with someone like you, and show the benefits of like what happens of working, right? And so, but essentially it's about building community. And the second thing is about understanding like what the unique problems are, and then 3, showing them the ROI of what it would look like to work with you. And especially with the addition of Vero Metal, like, hey, now you can show them what the possibilities are of what's to come. So it's almost like you need to, the best thing that I can think about is, do you remember when Steve Jobs would do his like yearly talks with his,
Yeah.
black turtleneck, and he'd show his innovation, but the people in the audience were his actual end users, customers.
Yeah.
Imagine you doing that, but for cabinet and millwork people, and you show them what's possible. You build a community around that. Like, I feel like that's truly the next level, because then if you can partner up, because like you're the icing, and then who else is part of that value chain? They're the making, but then who are the enablers to those people? And then you're on the tail end of that. But if
Yeah.
you can be the person that's building that community, and it can literally be as easy, as small as like, is start a Facebook group or start a WhatsApp group, and then quarterly you have a meeting with folks where you talk about all of your challenges and you show them the innovations. Is that helpful?
Yeah. 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 Because I mean, it's not a world that I've lived much in, to be honest with you. Um, the social media we've only been doing for the last maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
Um, and at first, I was kind of reluctant, to be honest with you. It was actually the
Yeah.
guys at Black Forest that dragged
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. They
They're
did
like,
they did well with it. Yeah, they did well for sure.
yeah. And so I certainly see the value of it, and just that's how the world seems to
It's
view.
moving in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So
for
yeah,
sure.
no, I appreciate that. I I've had ideas floating around, like doing regular vlogs and
Yeah,
sending
yeah,
those
yeah.
and those kinds of things. But yeah, no, I take that. I appreciate that advice.
Cool. Tell everybody what's your website.
Our website is www.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, Steve, appreciate it. Thanks a
All
lot.
right. Take care. Bye.
Yeah.
Hey, if you really enjoyed this episode, it would make a world of a difference if you subscribed, liked, and reviewed this podcast so that more people can hear the message and join the Woodpreneur community. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode.